I am somewhat detached. I'm the only Elsevier person that is based in Brussels. Also very important, you're the experts, I'm not. I'm a scientist, I am a scientist, I was a researcher, but I've never been a publisher. And I've worked now for Elsevier for a bit more than, almost 3 years now. And I take care of the EU affairs, and that is not governmental affairs, but I deal with the research world and the academic world, which means in Brussels, as you can see here, the European Commission, the European Parliament are the important players I interact with, much less the European Council who present the member states. And then, of course, around that, you've got a lot of people, lobbyists, activists, etc. The industry is present. STM, for example, is in Brussels, not all the time, but Barbara Kalumenos, for example, comes in and talks to many of the people in the Commission or the Parliament. You've got others, multipliers. And then importantly for me, there's the science community that is also there in Brussels and that I interact with, that we all interact with. So you can think of the club of funders, such as Science Europe, that is based in Brussels. They lobby the Commission, they lobby the Parliament, and also they come up with a lot of ideas about, many things that are of concern to us. You also have clubs of universities, and good example in this case would be LERU, the League of European Research Universities. It's a club of 21 research and 10 universities, and they talk about impact. They talk, in this case, they had a position paper on research assessment, and it is very broad recommendations made to the university, to the researchers, to the governments, to the funders, and to other external agencies. I mentioned this and I put the information. I won't go into the details, but you're welcome to go and check those out. There are many such documents, grey literature, policy documents that are produced around Brussels. Another good example would be the club, a much wider club of universities called EUA, the European University Association, which represents more than 850 universities in Europe. And they've done several study reports. In this case, for example, it was a second one they published in 2013 on rankings, university rankings, obviously interesting for them. Of course, that includes the impact and the publication impact.
Stephane, could I just say, STM are putting up the slides on their site quite quickly.
Yeah.
But this is crucial because it's so difficult to find anything on using Google's resources. Anything to do with Lero. I have put something up for Lero.
You do? Okay. Their website usually provides you those position papers, but usually, you can go to those sites. I think the key is you have to know who are the most influential ones. Also, who are the ones that are being read actually by the Parliament, by the Commission, etc. I can certainly tell you that Leru is one big one. EUA is probably an important one, maybe somewhat less, at least less that they would like to be. You can see there one of the latest reports from EUA was the one on impact on rankings again, but impact or illusion. The Parliament itself, actually, European Parliament, works and published recently one of their reports specifically looking at the measuring of scientific performance for improved policy making. So in this case, it's quite different. The whole idea is that they want to be able to do evidence-based policy. And they want to know where to go and get the good information. And so that's something that they've looked into. And they are, again, talking very broadly about how to do this. So this, to support and encourage the development of an integrated European research information infrastructure, broad terms, looking at methodologies for science performance assessment, saying, of course, that you need to support and coordinate the development of national research information systems, and that you need standard approach to the definition of outputs and other indicators. So this is the whole concept of EU having standardized approach to to all those issues. And finally, also the integrated European research information infrastructure. So broad terms again, but all those go into more details within working groups and of the Commission and the Parliament. What I really want to focus on is the European Commission, which is my main, I would even say, partner. And the reason I want to do this is because you have to keep in mind that they have a very special role. They're both a funder and a policymaker. So they have this dual role that's quite interesting. So as a funder, of course, it was in the framework program 7th that ended in 2013. You were talking about 50 billion over 7 years. The new one, Horizon 2020, represents 80 billion over the next 7 years. So we're talking about substantial amount of money. It's still only 15% of the money being spent on research in Europe, but it is one big chunk that's spent by one single institution, and that is quite influential. So the way that evaluation has been done on the framework programs before has been criticized. And the reason is because, as you can see here, what they look at, and this is the updated version, by the way, so this is already looking in more details than they were in the past. But they're really looking at how much money is going in, how many industry partners are in those framework program research programs. And by the way, I know I might be using lingo and jargon that is typically EU. Feel free to interrupt if you want, okay? Of course, how many universities are there? How many countries? How many women are in there? And there at the bottom, you can see they're also looking at the publications. But really what they've been looking at is the number of publications. And of course, the impact in terms of impact factor. But not much else, actually. And so that's one thing they've been criticized about. And so what you have today, and this was a conference that took place in September, where the President of the Commission, Juncker, was there, as well as many of the commissioners. And it's all about, and you see the hashtag here, EU budget focused on results. The Parliament has put pressure on the Commission that they need to justify what they do with their money. And you can see it means which areas do we spend on, how do we spend it, and how are we assessed? And the assessment is going to be a big, important aspect. And of course, one thing I find quite interesting is in the end, number 4 here, how do we communicate about it? Commission has been really crap at communicating overall. And that's something they need to get better at, and that includes assessing. So let's go back to research. Of course, European Commission has a lot of money that's not just dedicated to research. We're talking mainly, when it comes to research, to Horizon 2020. So that's the framework program. It's the 8th one. It lasts for 7 years, from 2013 to 2020. And it is just under 80 billion euros, which, by the way, was a substantial increase in the current climate, economical climate, from 50 to 80 billion. A big fight there that took place, and the Parliament was the one supporting. The first thing is that in terms of indicators, there are brand new indicators that they are going to have to use to assess Horizon 2020. And the one thing they did in this publication, I forgot to put the link. I will put it in the PDF that you will get. You can see that they, for the first time, were defining clearly that they wanted to look at outputs, differentiating that from results and from impact. So 3 elements that were important. And then using indicators specifically addressing all of those. And that's what you can see here. And so they've got a whole series of indicators looking into outputs, results, and impact, which is quite different. You can imagine that the output would be a workshop, for example, or the creation of a startup. Whereas the result here is actually the publications, for example. And the impact is much broader. It's the impact on society, which is one of the big themes that's appearing over there. So when it comes to the KPIs for Age 2020, where one of the pillars is excellent science, and there you can see for the ERC, the European Research Council, we're talking about the publications and how many are in the top 1% most highly cited. So top 1% is only for the ERC. They're really good. All the others is the top 10%, by the way. When it comes to future emerging technologies, we're also talking about, high-impact journals there. Another pillar is industrial leadership, where obviously there are no indicators that have nothing to do with publications. Societal challenges, there are 7 of them. There again, for those societal challenges, we're talking about peer-reviewed high-impact journals. But again, it is how many are in the top 10%. The spreading excellence and widening participation pillar, which means spreading excellence towards the new countries of the European Union. Again, we're talking about journal impact right here, the publications. Science with and for society, SWAFs, nothing there in terms of publication. And then we come to the last point, which is a joint research center, which is the in-house research service of the European Commission. 3,500 researchers there. And there again, we're talking about going back to the papers. So that's where they're actually, in the KPIs for H2020, looking at the publications. When it comes to cross-cutting indicators for H2020, you can see that contribution to the realization of the European research area. In this case, we're talking about the number of publications, but it's specifically open access. And then interesting, it's communication and dissemination. This is going beyond. So you can see the trend there is that it's not just publication, it's much wider than that. And we're talking about outreach activities other than peer-reviewed publications. So conferences, workshops, etc. But it can go all the way to TV programs, radio programs. So that's where it's going. Nothing for the European Innovation Institute of Technology, but going back to the specific atomic energy community, there again we're seeing that the publications, the peer-reviewed high-impact journals, are going to be one of the indicators. So that gives you a sense that out of all of those indicators, some, but certainly not the majority, are directed towards the publication impact. So when you look at the Commission, you wonder, okay, so they are interested in publication impact. Who do I need to talk to? As you can see, it's quite complicated. We're talking about 25,000, 30,000 civil servants out there. There's what they call a research family. That's director generals that are in charge of research. Obviously, digital economy, DG Connect, will be one of them. You can imagine that health, food, and safety will be another one in that family. Education, culture, right here. And, of course, the one leading the way for research is DG Research and Innovation, where the Commission is Carlos Moedas. So most of my interactions have been actually with that Director General. And it's even more complicated when you get to the actual DG Research. That's how they split. I cannot read it, you cannot read it. But I can tell you, the people we're interested in are right there, actually. So we're talking about Directorate A, Policy Development Coordination. There, what you have are people who are looking specifically at what sort of research is taking place in the different countries, in the different regions. They're looking specifically how those countries, the new countries in the EU, how they're performing, and specifically for research. Then there's another unit, A5, that looks at evaluation. That's their job. Those are the ones who we need to talk to, who are setting those new indicators. And then finally, you have the A6, which is Science Policy, Foresight, and Data. That's where new metrics, where the future is being designed in terms of policy. We're talking open science here, for example, with the alternative metrics. They also created for Horizon 2020 a brand new directorate with some new units that are the Common Support Center for Horizon 2020. And there too we're working with them, because what these guys are trying to do now is take all the database that they have in the Commission with all their research project, the proposals, the reporting, etc., trying to exploit that internally, but also link it, and they're talking to us, for example, at Elsevier, because they want to put that in connection with the Scopus data. And of course, enrich that data to make more sense out of it. And we're collaborating. We started a project pilot with them, with that unit. I won't have the time to talk about that. But what happened is that unit I was telling you about, A5, which is in charge of evaluation specifically, has a new head of unit. The previous one was quite conservative, to say the least, about its approach to impact. Rosalind is much more proactive and future-looking. And they recognize that they have to do ex post evaluation of FP7. They can't do Horizon 2020 yet. Hasn't been. It's ongoing. FP7 is over. Publications are still being produced, but still there's a lot that's being done. And so they were actually lacking the bibliometric data and the analysis capacity. So they came to us and asked us, "Can you help?" And so a colleague of mine, Guillaume Warnon, has been working with them. And I won't go into the details, but you see that they have a reporting system called SESAM, where the coordinators, the researchers that coordinate the programs, come and do their reporting. And these are the number of items in there from the projects. But if you boil it down all the way to actual DOI, it's down to 62,000 publications that are in there. And from there, we were able to put this in SciVal and extract information. What this means is that beyond just looking at publications being in the top 1% up 10%, they are interested and they know that they're going to be able to exploit that much better. And a good example is that, and those are the only slides I won't be able to share with you afterwards, we've actually looked into those 60+ thousand publications with them to see what they do. And you can see here they are very interested in international collaboration, and this is a field-weighted citation impact. And this is for the different projects within FP7. And you can see right there, that's the ERC and their publications. So high international collaboration and high impact. Whereas JRC, for example, is much lower on the impact, but a lot of international collaboration. So they're interested in those things. They want to be able to look into a country specifically. So this is the example of Denmark, where now you're going to be able to compare the country itself, the country itself, for example, when it comes to the field-weighted citation impact, and then you can see in FP7. And the European Commission is super happy to see that Denmark, when it comes to publication from FP7, is way above the national average. So those elements are things that they really want to look into and that we're helping them with. And again, keep in mind, all this is new for them. And of course, not just Denmark, Spain, but many other countries. They want to know also, when it comes to those publications emerging from FP7, they can look at the projects themselves and know what the topics are about. What they want to know is how that compares with the actual publications coming from there. And here you see the split. And where Denmark, or in this case Spain, where are they publishing? And how different it can be from one to the other. So those are the types of stuff they're doing. Also looking at text mining, using our fingerprinting engine, to know what the country, and this to policymakers is cool, because of course they see words that they can kind of understand, and it's not a graph. But here you see what the main words are when it comes to those publications coming out from Denmark. You can look at, of course, the number, who are the institutions in each country who are actually the most prolific when it comes to publications. And again, specifically coming out of the Framework Program 7. And also you can look at collaboration. You can see here that those are, for FP7, the countries that Denmark collaborate with the most. And the usual suspects, Germany, United Kingdom, Italy, France, are in there. But interestingly enough, here, the United States are there. Whereas for Spain, for example, same suspects on top, but the United States is not present. So all those elements are things that you can extract, but of course that they are very happy to look into. And I don't have time to go more in details, except of course they're highly interested in collaboration. They were super happy to see that, for example, for Spain, what you have here is that 70% of those publications coming from FP7 from Spain are the result of an international collaboration. Of course, they love that, when you know that the country itself is just around 40% for their overall production. And even better is that 3.5% are actually the result of academic corporate collaboration. This is above the 1-something% that usually you have in Spain and in most European countries. So that's one thing that in terms of policy they'd like to track to be able to increase much better, because that's the whole point. That's a pillar of H2020, is industrial leadership, making the link between academics and the private sector. So I'll stop there for those, and I'll finish with a few slides on what the future holds. Because one thing, of course, is bibliometrics. And again, with this unit, they want to be able, by doing FP7 and the ex post there, they want to get ready for H2020. Horizon 2020 is already getting to the midterm. So by 2017, they'll publish the result for the midterm. They want to be able to use those indicators already on H2020. So that's what they'll be doing. And the reason, again, is because they have to show Parliament and so EU citizens that there is a return on investment and a societal impact. And that's socioeconomic impact, actually. They will not focus more on regular bibliometrics, even though, as you can see, we're helping them extract as much information as possible. That is mostly Unit J5 that will do. They wanted to develop a lexicon that's dedicated to FP7. So you have to know that there are themes in all framework programs. And those are called the challenges of H2020 or the priorities of FP7. They want to have ontologies that are specifically created for that. So it helps them actually probe into publications, but any other types of document they have. One obvious one to go after are the proposals. We did work with them 2 years ago where we looked at brain science with the European Commission and other European and international partners. And what we had access to were the proposals. So that means that it's not the publication, it's what's come before. And what we did is compare the output in terms of publications and the proposals going to Horizon FP7. And of course, what's really interesting there is what is asked for money is not yet what is published. So for you publishers, that's highly interesting. The problem is that even though we're talking about open science, open access, open data, open government doesn't exist yet. So one of the things I'm doing is putting pressure on them so that they will release all this data. They have the database. They're just crap at using it themselves and making it available outside. So that's one thing we're putting pressure on right now. As I said, text and mining on proposal. And then they are really good at one thing, though, is working with the other units and other directorate generals, which hasn't been the case in the past. So you see a lot of collaboration between the different ones, Joint Research Center, etc. But it will go beyond bibliometrics. They are really interested at other types of impact. So their aim in that unit is to develop a societal economic impact indicators. They want to test that on FP7, because they have all the results of FP7. It's been finished. And they want to do this for the Horizon 2020 midterm review, end of 2016. So we're going to help them actually start on that. And they want to apply it then for the final review, final evaluation of H2020. They're going to set up early next year an expert group. It's going to be an open call to select the experts. So if you think you are experts, go to their database, let them know. Trust me, Mike is going to be here later. Mike is one of those people that I've introduced to them, and that we're actually going there on 2nd December to see the not A5, A6. And they will start work in 2016, again, identifying, delivering indicators and the methodology for the H2020 midterm review. The other trend, and that will be my last slide, is that in A6, you're talking now about policy. And it's mainly about open science first, huge thing. They're going to start next year an open science stakeholder forum, which will have 8 working groups. And 2 of them are going to be addressing impact. So it's going to be alternative metrics, in which, again, I don't have the time and you're the expert, but that includes alternative impacts of publications. I do question, of course, the numbers from ResearchGate or Altmetrics, but they are aware in the Commission that those are available. They'd like to see more research put into this potentially. What does it really mean? What is behind those numbers? What are the formula, the equations? Because those are not open. So they're looking into that. And of course, all other types of alternative metrics. And there's a working group also on rewards that's going to be set up that will have somewhat of a link, obviously, with impact and publications. The other trend we're seeing right now is a big push in evidence-based policy and foresight, for which they need to know which publications to use. What are the best sources? Because what they want to be able to is do science advice mechanisms. You might have heard that on 10th of November was announced a group of 7 high-level experts who will be, if you want, the chief scientific advisors to the commission. So they've replaced Anne Glover with 7 Anne Glovers. And it won't be limited just to that. The SAM will also use input from the academies and the in-house research service, the Joint Research Center. And then, of course, there's the foresight, which is more and more they want to be able to tell what the future is going to be. So not predicting, but seeing what actually the emerging trends. And there again, publications are going to be super important. And that's where right now, actually just Tuesday, the director of the Joint Research Center was meeting my CEO here in London because they are already doing a joint venture with CERN right now, where the whole point is to use patents, news information, publications, and to be able to extract from there what the new technologies are. So CERN wants to know, for the next Large Hadron Collider, they want to know what the new technologies will be, that they will be using 5-10 years down the line. The policymakers, they want to know what the next big policy issues are going to be. You can imagine that they missed fracking, they missed the GMOs. If they had seen that coming, they would have been able to act earlier and not see those topics go into the public and become viral. So that's what they're interested in, and that's what we're seeing. So as a conclusion, yes, it's going to be about bibliometrics. They're there to stay, but they will be evolving. Oops. Sorry. Probably a smarter use of it coming from the European Commission, and that's, I think, really great, but also publication alternative metrics, as I mentioned. But we will go well beyond. It's the socioeconomic impact, it's the open science and all the metrics that will come with that, it's the evidence-based policy and the foresight. So with that, thank you very much, and happy to take any question now or later.